Well, I was going to say that so on the simulation hypothesis, there's like another way that could happen that is maybe even less dependent on directly plugging into like human brains and all that sort of thing, which is, so every time we don't know, and this is super speculative. I'm just going to carve this out as this. Jeremy's being super like guesswork here. Nobody knows.
Go for it, Jeremy.
Giddy up. So you've got this idea that every time you have a model that generates an output, it's having to kind of tap into a model, a kind of mental image, if you will, of the way the world is. It kind of, in a sense, you could argue, instantiates maybe a simulation of how the world is. In other words, to take it to the extreme, not saying this is what's actually going on. In fact, I would even say this is certainly not what's going on with current models, but eventually, maybe, who knows, every time like you generate the next word in the token prediction, you're having to like load up this entire simulation, maybe of all the data that the model has ingested, which could basically include like all of known physics at a certain point. Like, I mean, again, super speculative, but it's that literally every token that the chatbot predicts could be associated with a stand-up of an entire simulated environment. Who knows? Not saying this is the case, but just like when you think about what is the mechanism that would produce the most simulated worlds as fast,
accurate, also the most accurate prediction. Like if you fully simulate, a world, that's potentially going to give you very accurate predictions. Yeah.
Like it's possible, but it kind of speaks to that question of consciousness too. Like,
right, what is it?
Yeah, no idea.
We're very cocky about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and there's emerging evidence that plants are not just consciousness, but they actually communicate, which is real weird. Because, like, then what is that? If it's not in the neurons, if it's not in the brain, and it exists in everything, does it exist in soil? Is it in trees?
Yep.
Is it in, what is a butterfly thinking?
No, exactly.
Does it just have a limited capacity to express itself?
We're so ignorant of that.
Well, we're also very arrogant, because we're the shit. Because we're people. You know?
Bingo.
There's
which allows us to have the hubris to make something like AI.
Yeah, and the worst episodes in the history of our species are, I think like Jeremy said, have been when we looked at others as though they were not people and treated them that way.
And you can kind of see how, so I don't know, there's, when you look at like what humans think is conscious and what humans think is not conscious, there's a lot of like human chauvinism, I guess you could call it, that goes into that. Like we look at a dog, we're like, oh, it must be conscious because it licks me. It acts as if it loves me. Right? There are all these outward indicators of a mind there. But when you look at like cells communicate with their environments in ways that are completely different and alien to us.
Right.
There are inputs and outputs and all that kind of thing. You can also look at the higher scale, the human superorganism we talked about, all those human beings interacting together to form this like planet-wide organism. What is that thing conscious? Is there some kind of consciousness we could ascribe to that?
And then what the fuck is spooky action at a distance?